about the time that we were doing all of this, I started to get absolutely intrigued with, there's another method, and this is another method that's called latent semantic analysis, and for the two of you in this room who are interested into the subtleties of computational linguistics, you will appreciate the beauty of the program. But I had a student at UT who was helping me with this, Sherlock Campbell. And what we were doing was trying this incredibly complicated program that would allow us to see if people were writing about the same topic or changing topics, would they benefit? And this method, this LSA, is a really elegant way of looking at how similar any two essays are, any two text samples are. So he spent a year on this project, and at the end, we found absolutely nothing. Now you're sitting there thinking, why did you just tell me that? Well, because this program was designed to look at the content of words. And what it does is it throws out junk words. And these junk words are the most common words. These are words like pronouns and prepositions and articles, words that no self-respecting computer scientist ever cares about. So what we did was we turned the computer upside down and we said, let's see what happens if we just analyze these junk words. And voila, we got these remarkable effects. And what we found was that we could predict whose health would improve by looking at how people changed in their use of these junk words from day to day, and specifically their use of pronouns. The people who benefited the most, one day they'd use first person singular, I, me, and my at high rates, and other pronouns, he, she, they, etc., at low rates. And the next day they'd switch, and the day after that they'd switch again. Didn't matter which way they went, they were switching. And as we looked at them more closely, these were the people who were changing perspectives from one day to the next. So, and this is the way a good psychotherapist would work. If I'm going to a therapist and I'm going there because I'm having trouble with my relationship with my wife, if I go in and I say, yeah, I'm here because my wife, she does this, she does that, she does this, she does that, the therapist will stop me and say, what about you? How do you feel? I have to talk about myself. And if I go in the first day saying I'm here to talk about my wife and I say, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, a good therapist will stop me and ask about my wife. What's her perspective? And people who were benefiting were naturally doing this, and we were capturing it through pronoun use. Now, about the time we were discovering this, I was on a flight somewhere, and I was reading a book that had recently been published by George Miller called The Science of Words. And in this book, he summarizes a lot of the research, and it was one of those aha experiences for me. He makes a big distinction between two broad categories of words, what he calls content words. And a content word would be usually a noun, regular verb, an adjective, most adverbs. And then what he called function words. And function words were a category of words that I had never heard of, but they included all the smallest words in English. Pronouns, prepositions, to, of, for, articles, a, and the, negations, no, not, never, conjunctions, and, since, etc. Pronouns, prepositions, articles, conjunctions, auxiliary verbs, is, are, etc. And a couple of other categories. Now here's what's interesting about these function words. First of all, function words, there are only about 500 of them in English, whereas most of the people in this room have a vocabulary of almost 100,000 words. Only 500 of them are these function words. Nevertheless, they account for about 55 to 60% of all the words we say, we hear, we use. In other words, these are real high, they are very, very common words. They're also the shortest words. They're almost impossible to hear. And even though I'll be talking about function words today, and you're going to try to start listening to my function words maybe for a minute or two, it'll get too boring and you can't do it. But you can't, the words like a and the and so forth, in our brain, almost at priming speeds, you just can't hear it. The other thing that's interesting is that function and content words are processed in the brain differently. If I had slides, I would have the required picture of a brain. Nowadays, if you're a psychologist, there's a legal thing that you have to show a picture of a brain. Ideally, it was an fMRI image. And what it would show was a brain with two areas that are particularly common in speech. There's one that's in the frontal lobe, which is Broca's area, and one here in the temporal lobe, which is called Wernicke's area. Now, I'm grossly oversimplifying, but in terms of brain damage research, if you have someone who has damage to their frontal lobe from a stroke or something else, but their temporal lobe is intact, they have a really interesting speech deficit. If you ask them, for example, to describe the stage, a person with Broca's area, frontal lobe damage, might say, podium, brown podium, ground, wire, flags, red, and it would be a pretty slow, painful discussion. If, however, you had someone who had damage to the temporal lobe, and Wernicke's isn't working, but the Broca's area is working just fine, and you ask a person to describe the stage here, first of all, they would be socially connected to you. And here's how they might react. They say, oh, yeah, sure. Over there, there's that one there, and it's right next to this one. And you can see this, it's right here. And, look down there, you can see that thing. Sometimes we call this a word salad, but this salad is actually made up almost entirely of function words. Function words are also interesting because they are tremendously social. Imagine you pick up, I come here and there is a note sitting here, and it says, I'm not here, I'll be back later. Now, on one level, that makes perfect sense, but on another level, it makes absolutely no sense. Who's I? Am not here. Where's am implies present tense, not here. Where's here? Maybe it meant here. I'll be back, etc. The reality is those are all function words, and function words are words that are shared between the speaker and the listener at a particular point in time. And if that note was given to the author of the note, say 2 months later, and that the person might say, that's my handwriting, I have no idea what that refers to. Function words are social. They tell us a lot about people. To give you an example, let's say that I'm going to talk about the flag here, and I start making references about the flag and its meaning and so forth, and afterwards, you see a friend, you say, oh yeah, I went and heard Pennebaker's lecture. Yeah, he talked about the flag. And your friend's going to say, what do you mean, the flag? When we talk about the flag, right now, you and I both know which flag I'm referring to. But even afterwards, that doesn't exist. That word has a meaning for us right now. Now, this is the beginning of the story, because what this means is we can start looking at these function words and getting a sense of how they can tell us about people. By looking at a text, we can get a sense of the person, the speaker, or the writer's relationship with the audience, as well as the topic that he or she is writing about. And we can learn much, much more.